Now, before I show you this, here's what I want you to consider. There's a lot of school districts out there that are doing benchmark testing, that are preparing benchmark exams to measure how well students are doing on the Common Core. That's fabulous. In beginning of the year 2014-2015, right, the 2014-2015 school year is when states who have agreed to use the Common Core are going to first use their high-stakes assessments to measure students on how their performance is on the Common Core, right? And that's also fabulous. But here's the thing. This is how I think about it. School districts should continue to do the benchmark testing, and of course, we're going to continue down the road of high-stakes testing, at least for the foreseeable future. My thing is, though, is that sometimes I think that relying on benchmark testing and certainly relying on the end-of-year test is kind of like driving a car using only the rear-view mirror, right? I'm looking at how the students are doing in the past. So my friend Ken and I sat down and we thought, how could we help teachers who use sound grading practices know at a glance, based on the information that they've entered in their grade book, based on their own formative and summative assessment, how well students are doing and which ones need more help and exactly what they need help on. And so we came up with this idea of the standards visualizer. Let me just take a second and give you a demonstration of what the standards visualizer looks like. So I'm going to head back over to my web browser, and in my web browser, I'm going to switch into PowerTeacher. So you're looking at the PowerTeacher portal, what most of you on the phone are probably used to looking at. Here on the PowerTeacher portal, we've added this additional icon here. Looks like a pair of 3D glasses. And the idea that we had for the icon really was, could we give teachers a way of basically in 3 dimensions, at a glance, being able to see where their students are as it applies to the Common Core standards? Or, as a matter of fact, this visualizer will work on any standards that your school district uses. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this icon, and the standard visualizer displays. This is what it looks like. The idea behind this is that teachers can tell at a glance where their students are strong overall as a class, and which standards are giving their students a little bit more trouble. Now you'll notice that some of these tiles, each tile represents, by the way, a single standard in the Common Core. Some of them are gray. The gray standards are those that I have not yet evaluated in my gradebook. I haven't given any formative assignments or assessments about them, no summative assessments about them either. But I do want to point out that I can roll my cursor just over any one of these, and what I will get is the full description of the standard right out of the way that the authors entered those standards in the Common Core standards, right? So I can see exactly what the objective is. Now I'm going to scroll to the top, and for right now, I'm not really interested in the standards that I have not yet taught, right? I'm going to get those out of my way. So I'm going to go up here to the filtering area, and I'm going to choose, I want you just to show me the standards that have been assessed. So when I select that filter, the visualizer immediately reorganizes itself. And now I'm only looking at standards. You'll notice all the gray boxes are gone, and I'm only looking at standards that I have at least one assignment or formative assessment aligned to in my gradebook. Now you could probably guess what the colors mean, right? So green, of course, represents that would be a good thing, and red would mean not so good. This is how it breaks down, though. What I'm looking at here is that in order for a standard tile to be green, at least 70% of my students have to have met the standard. And I can change that threshold so that it's 80%. Now I can see that which standards at least 80% of my students have met. I can take this all the way up to 100%. Now, if I do that, I can see that, wow, I do not have any of these standards that 100% of my students have met, right? I'm going to just leave it at 70% for now. I'm going to focus on which ones I can help the students the most on. Where are we weakest as a class? You'll also notice that some of the tiles are different sizes. Because learning happens over time, I may want to be able to differentiate between standards that we just started to learn about yesterday, and the students have only had one homework assignment or one project that relates to that standard, versus the standards that we've been working on for 3 weeks, and I've given several formative assessments or assignments about, and I still have students that are not meeting that particular standard. Well, that's where the size comes in. The larger the tile, there's two sizes, the small or large. The tiles that are larger represent standards where students have had more practice, and the smaller tiles are the ones where the students have had less practice. And I can actually, using this slider right up here, choose where that breakdown is. So I'm going to switch this to 3. 3 or more assignments for me is going to right now decide that more than 3 is a lot of practice, and less than 3 is maybe not so much practice. The more assignments, by the way, during the year that the teacher aligns to particular standards, that will affect this slider. So if at some point I've got 5, 10, or 7 different formative assessments that we do throughout the year on a particular standard, I'll be able to move the threshold to that level and see where the students are weak, where they've had the most practice, and so forth. Now, this immediately as I change any of these settings, the visualizer updates itself. So you can see here at a glance, what am I going to look for? I'm going to look for the big red tiles, because those represent the standards where the students have had the most practice, and yet where I still have less than 70% of my students who have met this particular standard. So that's going to tell us the what, right? What is the standard that I really should focus on? The next question, of course, we're going to get from teachers is the who. Who are the students that I really need to address this with? Well, we make that pretty easy. I'm just going to pick this standard right here. I want to know who in my class has met this and who in my class has not yet met this standard. All I have to do is click the tile. By clicking the tile, I see a list of all the students in my section here, and which ones have met the standard, which ones are below meeting the standard. In this case, I use the wording of approaching, right? And I can see exactly who I need to target with this particular standard. Now, that's a really quick tour of the standards visualizer. I can also look at the standards visualizer for a particular student. If I click a particular student's name, then it's going to display the standards visualizer based on how that student themselves has performed. And I can still use this same filters here, where I may only want those that I've assessed. And you can see here this student's doing pretty good. The only tile that we really have that's red for this one student is a small tile, meaning that we just started this particular standard and they've only had, in this case, one opportunity to practice, right? So I can see this in terms of my entire section, or I can see it in terms of just individual students as well.